Peace and love, family. Welcome to another powerful discussion with your sister, Dr. Maat. Today, family, I have in the building one of our master teachers, one of our scholars, the great Dr. Naeem Akbar. Yes, you heard it today. Dr. Maat is going to sit down and have a chat with our great scholar, our great Black psychologist, our great master teacher, Dr. Naeem Akbar. Family, I gotta tell you, when he finally accepted, and he'll tell you, man, I've been calling him for about 5 years and asking him, can you come on? And he said, I'm in retirement mode. I'm in retirement. I'm not trying to come. And so I had to keep calling and calling and calling. And eventually he said, yeah, I'll come on for a chat. And so I'm super excited. You all know that I'm a huge, huge fan of Dr. Naeem Akbar. I promote his books, Visions for Black Men. I promote his books. And family, if you don't have his books, make sure that you get them. So Visions for Black Men. Also, Know Thyself. Make sure that you get his book, Know Thyself. Also, family, Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. In fact, this is the book that I always, my students from Conscious Ingenuity, those instructors, this is mandatory reading for my instructors. This is the first textbook that I gave my instructors to read, Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. And it's a book that, shout out to my brothers, prisoners of consciousness, those brothers in prison, we're getting ready to do a book club. Okay. And this is our first book, Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. And I also recommend this book for people who are trying to just figure out who we are, right? People who are trying to heal, people who have recognized the need for healing our fractured consciousness. And so I always recommend this book. And then last but not least, family, Akbar Papers in African Psychology. So family, make sure that you get all of his books. You see that not only do I have them, family, but I study them and I promote them and I apply them. And so I want to shout out the Maadi and family who's in the building. I see you, CJ Young. He's in the building. He says peace and love. I see Sankofa. Face Yoga is in the building. Peace and love to your family. I look forward to having your son in my program this summer. I see who else we got in the building. TK says peace and black love. Who is this right here? Brother Frank said, I can't wait for this. I can't wait to hear the words of Dr. Naeem Akbar. The Queen Mother, beautiful mind, she's in the building. She says, peace and love to everyone. I see my E5 twins are in the building. They said a BB5. Hodie African family, race first. Ashe. I see Sister Juju, another Queen Mother in the building. She says, Black African power. Who else is this? PJH Big Dog is in the building. He says, salute to you, salute to you. He says, salute Queen, salute to you, warrior. I see saw that. Said peace and love to Sister Dr. Maat and family. All right, who else we got in the building? All right, we got the Queen Mother Laylo Love is in the building. She says love to your family. I see Aman is in the building. Said peace to the Queen Mother, peace and love to you. My E5 twins say may you continue to have blessings poured over you. Oluko Maat. Peace and love to you. All right, family. So without further ado, because we only have them, family, until 1:30, I'm going to bring on the great Dr. Naeem Akbar. And as you can imagine, just as an African-centered educator, how excited I am. Like I was telling my son this morning, I said, you all have your celebrities, but Dr. Naeem Akbar is one of my celebrities. So I feel like a kid on Kwanzaa, getting ready to open up my Zuwadi, Ashe. And so family, make sure that you thumb up the show. Thumb up this discussion, okay? That's what I need you to do. Thumb up the discussion. Share it. Share this discussion, okay? Thumb it up. Share it, family. In this age of technology, each one teach one. We can each one teach one, right? We can practice each one teach one by simply sharing on our social media pages. And also, family, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, hit the notification, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and hit the notification bell so that whenever I go live, you will be notified. So I just asked you for 3 things. I'm getting ready to bring on one of our mighty warriors. Brought him out of retirement. I had to harass him, okay? So brought him out of retirement for a quick chat. The least you could do is thumb up this video, share this video, okay? And subscribe to the channel. All right, without further ado, I'm going to bring on the master teacher, our great Dr. Naeem Akbar. Peace and love to you, Dr. Akbar. How are you?
Peace and love to you. I'm very happy to be with you at last as a result of your tenacity, insistence, and persistence.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Akbar, for taking time out of your schedule to be with my listeners and I today. I was telling the listeners, I said I was hounding them. I was calling them every year. Dr. Akbar, I just want you to come on. Dr. Akbar, please come on. Dr. Akbar, you said, look, you said, I'm in retirement. I'm in
Right.
retirement. I'm trying to enjoy my grandchildren and my children. And so you said I'm in retirement mode, but you did agree to come on. And I really, I truly, truly um just I'm so appreciative, of you, your work, and your time. I study you, Dr. Akbar. I've looked at your interviews. I've read and studied your books. I've implemented your books. And so again, I feel like a child, like a Watoto, opening up a Zuwadi right now, opening up gifts just to hear your voice and see your face. And so I just want to give you your flowers while you can smell them. That's what my mother always says. My mother always told me, she said, give me my flowers while I can smell them. She said, don't wait until I'm in a casket to be
Yeah.
saying great things to me. She said, I want to hear them right now. So I just want to say to you, Dr. Naeem Akbar, that we love you. We appreciate your work. And we appreciate it. We appreciate your work and we love you. We venerate you, we honor you. And we thank you, Dr. Akbar. And people in the chat, they're sharing my same sentiments. You know, look at this. I don't know if you can see their comments on the screen, but people in the chat are echoing my sentiments. They're saying Baba Akbar, and so people are, they're giving you flowers in the chat. So we love you. We appreciate you, Doc. We appreciate you. And I don't know if you can see them. So this is some more hearts. So the Queen Mother, she sent you some hearts. Dr. Craig Samuels, he says Ashe. Sister Juju. And so people are just giving you your flowers right now. Right now. And so we just appreciate you. So Doc, I just have a couple of questions since we're just, it's just a quick chat with you. And so I do have a couple of questions. In the 90s, okay, and everyone who's listening to me, we know that you are an African centered, a black psychologist. And so you did a lot of great work. I came across your work in the 90s. I was born in 81. And so I didn't come across your work until around 96, 97. And so I know that you were doing a lot of work. People saw you all over. You did, a lot of interviews with Tavis Smiley. And so you were all over the place, during the 90s. And you focused a whole lot on, analyzing, diagnosing, right? Analyzing, diagnosing, and healing the black psychology. Could you tell us why? Why was your focus, Doc, so much on, analyzing, diagnosing, and healing the black psychology?
Well, I believe that, and by the way, thank you very much for the accolades. I'm very happy to still be wanted, even though I'm trying desperately to arrest from a very long career. But thank you. It's very gratifying to still be wanted and wanted to be heard from. So thank
Ashe,
you so much for the
Ashe,
very kind regards.
Ashe.
Um, the reality is that we were taken out of a deep sleep by the realities that would take place during the 60s and 70s. A recognition that we were in a condition that otherwise we sort of taken for granted. We become passively accepting of our condition, if you will.
Mm,
And so with the combination of the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement, many of us began to awaken for the very first time and begin to see what our reality was here in America. Not only in terms of how we were operating as a people towards each other and how we were seeing ourselves, but how we were being treated in the conditions we were in. We had assumed that the mythology that we were free Americans was in fact true. We believed the hype to a great extent. And it was only when we began to challenge some of those things with the civil rights movement, with the Black Power movement, that we began to find out that things were not as comfortable as we come to accept them as being. So once we understood that in reality, we were still in slavery for all intents and purposes, and that we were not free Americans as we've come to pretty much accept and believe to a great extent. And with that realization, we then had to begin to kind of explore what accounted for and what was the nature of our situation. And that, of course, led to the fact that we need to understand us. We need to understand who we are. At that point, I was a graduate student in psychology, assuming that there would be answers in mainstream European American psychology to understand why we were crazy too, assuming that our crazy, black crazy, was the same as white crazy. So I thought that if I could become a psychologist, I would be able to understand that. Very early in my career as a student, I discovered that they didn't have the answers, and that in fact, what they were defining as psychology was the way that they understood themselves, and it was not the way that we understood. It was not a reality of who we were. In fact, we were simply a deviation. To be black was to be a deviation from being white. And so that, of course, awakened me to say, okay, if I'm going to be in this whole area of psychology, then I got to try to understand who I am. So the challenge became, how do I begin to understand who I am as a black man, as a black person here in America? And that opened the door. And so that then led to the work that you described as, analysis, trying to understand, dissection, because we had to begin to dig and do research because before that time, we were simply looking at ourselves as deviant white people. So in other words, we were simply a deviation of white people. So to the degree to which we were not acting like white people, we were abnormal. So everything about us that was us was therefore abnormal. And their psychology documented that. So the way that we thought and acted in terms of making decisions and acting quote unquote rationally was not the way they made rational decisions. The way we dealt with emotions, the way we dealt with family, the way we dealt with anything dealing with our reality was different from the way they did it. And they defined that as being not only deviant, but inferior and deficient. So I was not willing to accept the fact that everything about black people was abnormal or deficient. And that then opened the door to begin to explore who we really were.
Whew. Doc, so what I'm hearing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that your work is really a continuation of the work that was the Black Power movement, coming out of that. So your work kind of stems from out of the Black Power movement into, like you said, trying to understand who we are, why do we think the way we think, and so that's where your work stems from. And I love what you said. You said so much, man. When you said we were viewing ourselves as really deviant white people, and then you also talked about how if we don't act, for lack of better words, the way they act, then something is wrong with us. And so just trying to understand, what I'm hearing from you is the African psychology or African personality, and really trying to understand what contributes, right, to the shaping, what experiences that we have that contributed to the shaping of, our psychology, and of our personalities. I don't know, as a psychologist, you may correct me. I kind of interchange those things when I think of psychology and personality. I mean, I don't want to say they're one and the same, but I feel like they go hand in hand, Doc. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, they kind of go hand in hand. And so that's what happened. And so let me ask you this. What did you attribute? Because you did mention the Black Power movement. But if we, just as a student of history, and I had this discussion with, shout out to Baba Amin of the Uhuru Academy. He and I was talking about this on the telephone earlier. You see this flow, right? Or these changes in Black consciousness as we study history, and we can go back to the 1800s where ideas of Black nationality and back to Africa, those ideas were being promoted in the 1800s. And then you had Booker T, you had Garvey, you had W.E.B. Du Bois, and so you had that. And then it's kind of like we shift from there to then we kind of the consciousness shifts, and it's kind of like we go off track, and then something happens, and now we're back to the civil rights movement, Black Power movement. Then something happens, and then we go off track, and then and then you see another shift that happens in the 90s with the hip hop music, and then something happens, and then we go off track, and then we see. So it's these the way Baba Amin described it. He called it ebb and flow. He said, so it's like an ebb and flow of Black consciousness. And so the question is, Doc, what contributes to the ebb and flow of Black consciousness? Because it's kind of like, Doc, sometimes I feel like our people are moving in the right direction, and then something happens, and so then we're going left. And then we jump back on track, and then you hear about Black consciousness, and then it just. So what contributes to what Baba Amin calls the ebb and flow of Black consciousness?
Well, I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that there is, a part of the concern is that I think that Black consciousness represents represents an expression of self-affirmation. That is, we are in a situation of looking at and understanding and exploring and looking for ourselves. Those are the areas of which, when we go into, I think, a kind of a flowing of Black consciousness. Mm-hmm. I think it begins to ebb when we buy into an illusion of self-discovery rather than the reality of self-discovery. And so what that means is that, let me just give the example of this. I believe that there was the whole kind of conflict between the integration and the separation kind of issue, the nationalist point of view versus the integrationist point of view. The integrationist idea was that if we act right and put forth our best foot, and we can become participants in being in America. And I think that kind of split or that schism is kind of really described by Du Bois's notion of the double consciousness, that we are somehow Africans and Americans, in our mind, in our mindset. We're just Africans in reality. We're just who we are. So we can't be split. We can only be one person. But in the way that we think and our thinking, from our enslavement up until now, we've tended to see ourselves through two lenses, that double lens of that double consciousness of being American and being African. And I think that the ebb and the flow really kind of goes back and forth between those two poles on the one hand. And so I think there are periods when we feel that we can become Americans and our energy gets directed in that direction because we think that will fulfill us, and we become very much involved. And even Du Bois himself, began his work and his writing and his research around the whole effort of integration. He was an integrationist. He was one of the founders of the NAACP. He was convinced that our solution was to be affiliated with and accepted by America as an American. Even Frederick Douglass, in his whole abolitionist movement, his idea was that the idea of freedom was to get us not free from our condition to become ourselves, but free from our condition to be accepted by America. So that idea of aspiring to find ourselves by becoming Americans has always been the competing objective that causes our consciousness to flow away from self-affirmation to identification with the American or the white consciousness. Okay. Now,
Woo.
so what happened is this. So we go through these eras. So during the civil rights era, there was this whole kind of push. Okay, we are going to get integrated. We want to be accepted by America. And all these efforts, I mean, getting ourselves beat to death to be able to sit on a lunch counter, to ride on the bus, the whole voting rights, all those kinds of activities, the whole thrust of the civil rights movement was towards acceptance, acceptability, a definition, and identification with white America. That particular thrust was very much driven, but behind that was a recognition of a very strong force within us that this was not going to get us where we needed to go. That gave birth, well, not birth, that gave resurrection to the Black Power movement when there was this whole kind of thrust coming from the nationalist thrust in our own consciousness. And this is the Black consciousness side that began to say, we must do for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But whether it was the Panthers, whether it's the Nation of Islam, whether it was the whole kind of nationalist thrust carried on through Malcolm, and all those other kinds of things were going on. There was this self-affirming consciousness that we must be who we are, not making our priority to become part of America, but to become part of ourselves, to be reunited with who we really are. And so that split, continued to be kind of at war with each other. Now let me tell you what happened.
Mm-hmm.
The success of that thrust brought us to the moment of it reached its peak of success with the election of Barack Obama. And it created the illusion that we are free at last because we now have a Black person in the White House. And that is the ultimate acceptance in terms of our minds, of acceptance as our seeing ourselves as we've truly become Americans now. You know, that immediately gave birth to, but it did two things. It killed the aspiration for self-awareness and self-consciousness. And that was when we began to see the ebb of a lot of the Black consciousness that was going on simultaneously with the civil rights movement, that somehow it was reaching a peak of fervor, and there's a kind of a pull against the whole kind of integrationist movement. But it kind of lost its whole energy when Obama got in the White House and people began to talk about a post-racial society. That we are really home now. We really got there. And our children, we begin even to raise our children, our young people, begin to think of themselves as having arrived. I mean, they at the same time that it was good to be able to see that, yeah, we could be president if we wanted to, kind of thing. I mean, that was a good dose for self-esteem. But the problem is that it required you to give up who you really were authentically
Woo.
to be able to get that dose of self-esteem. And so we wiped out a generation of consciousness by buying into that illusion. With all of its positive value, it wiped out the thrust of nationalism. So that gave birth to a kind of the counter force that created the reality that brought us back to have to wake up the Black consciousness again. With here comes Trump, here comes DeSantis, and it is in fact declaring and affirming that the nationalists were right all the time. That just because you're in the White House, you still ain't white. And being a participant, being present, doesn't mean you got power. And that's the real thing. That's a long, confabulated answer. And
No,
I
no,
really,
no. No, Dr. Akbar, you broke it down nicely, and you're saying that that what's what that us buying into myths, right? And kind of when we buy into myths, there's an infighting, between us, that dual consciousness, like you said, the W.E.B. Du Bois, and also Dr. Amos Wilson, he talked about it too. He called it a dual consciousness. W.E.B. Du Bois called it a double consciousness. But you're saying that whenever we buy into that, the myth of they say we're under the illusion of inclusion, or that myth of it, that we're now accepted and we're now Americans. You're saying that that contributes to the inner warring or internal warring within us, within our consciousness, and that is what attributes to the ebb and flow of Black consciousness. So you said it's always there, but it's
Yeah,
just when we buy into these myths of acceptance, and we are Americans and we finally arrive, then there's that double consciousness, dual consciousness going in, and then we see that Black consciousness takes a dive, right, until
yeah,
something else happens to wake us back up. And so it was on point, Dr. Akbar. Thank you so much for that, because the reason I asked that is because um I'm seeing it now. I'm seeing the dive now, Dr. Akbar.
yes,
And this kind of segues into my next question, which is, what is your assessment of the current state of Black consciousness? Because I just wanted to tell you what's happening, and you may already know what's happening. There's a growing movement online amongst young people who are saying we're not African. You see how you just said, yeah, we're Africans. You said it with no
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Online, there's a growing movement of people, and one of the puppet masters, he has about 500,000 people following him. But there's this growing movement. We're not Africans. The slave trade never happened. We are indigenous to the Americas. We've always been here. And I'm talking about amongst young people, Dr. Akbar. They will
Yeah,
they will they
yeah,
will fight you tooth and nail if you say that you're African. If you say, no, you're just an African and American. No, I'm American, or no, so they want to disconnect themselves from Africa completely. So much so that they're saying the slave trade never happened. Harriet Tubman was a fictitious character made up by white folks. Nat Turner never existed. Dr. Akbar, this is what we're contending with right now. So
yeah.
what would you call this type of thinking? I mean, I say self-hate, but if you had to diagnose people who subscribe to that way of thinking, I'm not African, the slave trade never happened, Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner never existed, we've always been here, what would you call this type of thinking, Dr. Akbar?
In the book you pointed to, the Akbar papers, I have an article in there where I describe mental disorders among African Americans. And one of the most severe of the mental disorders is what I call the anti-self disorder, where that is, and from our perspective, that is the most severe form of insanity. When you become in war, when you become in war and opposed to yourself. So to have an anti-self disorder, that means when you want to deny who you are,
Mm,
that is the worst kind of insanity.
mm,
From from a Black perspective, from our perspective, that's worse than schizophrenia from
mm,
whites' perspective, because
mm,
that's an individual kind of thing. But when one becomes engrossed in this kind of opposition to oneself and developing exactly anti-self disorder, that's the most extreme. I think that's extremely difficult, and I think that it parallels the severity of the counteraction against us. So the kind of blatant attacks that are coming at us from the outside are almost necessary within the universal energy system to knock us back into realization of what our realities really are. So the cure for those young people who don't believe that they're Africans is Donald Trump, the Proud Boys, DeSantis, the Klan, these people who are about to absolutely manifest overt warfare
mm,
against Black people, where your uniform will be the color of your skin. So we don't have to worry about convincing them to remember who they are because they're going to be driven to that reality by the realities of the opposition.
Mm.
Because the reality is going to turn that around. One thing about it, when you buy into a mythology that is a lie, reality will come home to haunt you. And that's the reality that we're seeing on the other end. So the universe is going to take care of that. What we need to understand, however, is for those of us who claim to be conscious, we need to begin to make sure that we move away from a reactive posture and move increasingly towards affirming who we are in a proactive posture. And that is not wait for our agenda to be set by what they're doing to us or what we think they are attacking us to do, but to make sure that we are engaged in a single perspective of trying to build what we need to do for ourselves. The idea of knowing ourselves, doing for ourselves, and defining ourselves. That's our work. That's our responsibility. We should be waiting for someone to give us freedom. We have to understand no one can ever give you freedom. We've got to take our freedom.
Mm.
We take our freedom by doing for ourselves what we expect other people to do for us. We got to begin to educate our people. We can't sit around marching because they take Black studies out of the public school classroom. That simply remotivates us to set up freedom schools in our communities that we are responsible for, that we teach ourselves. We don't spend all of our time worrying about someone misrepresenting us. We have as much access to the media as you're demonstrating right with this program as anyone else does. Let us take that and tell our story. Let us take that and give our narrative. If they want to take Black studies, the little bit they do, Black History Month, out of the schools, good. Let's have afternoon programs year round in every church we have in our community, in every fraternity, sorority, youth program. Let us make our communities our freedom schools where we teach our truth for us and stop worrying about trying to convince white people not to be racist. That is not our road to freedom. Our road to freedom is not to somehow correct white people's thinking. It is to correct our own thinking about ourselves and to take our power and kick butt using that power and go where we need to go.
Fire! 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 Fire!
Oh my gosh, Dr. Akbar, this has been truly a treat. I know I kept you for 30 minutes as agreed upon, and we are at the mark. And you got me so inspired. Just listening to you just now, I'm fired up beyond fired up. Like but look, Doc, I have my programs. We have African Center Schools. Shout out to the Uhuru Academy, Freedom Home Academy, Akbar House, Cuba Zayax Institute. Shout out to Nations House, all of the African Center Schools, Conscious Ingenuity, MELTREK 365. So, Doc, you just listening to you just now, just first of all, it affirmed that we're doing what we need to be doing. We're doing the right thing. And I meant to mention the Kamoyo Shule Africana. So we're doing that. We have the weekend schools, but we need to do it on a larger scale, and we need more support of this. And so, Doc, I thank you from the bottom of your heart for giving me 30 minutes of your time. Dr. Akbar, do you have any closing words for the listening audience?
Uh, our power is in self-knowledge. I mean, and we can't forget that that is our ultimate power. And we must direct our energy towards affirming who we are, declaring who we are. Don't waste so much time crying the blues about the casualties, the casualties who've lost their minds, or even the oppressor who is going to be. Let's use our time affirming the fact that the victory is going to be ours. We have proven that we can overcome this thing by the mere fact of our survival through what we've come through. Do not be disenchanted. Do not be depressed by where we are. We're going to overcome this. And I don't mean by singing a hymn. We're going to overcome it by simply affirming who we are. Let's keep
Absolutely.
on.
Absolutely, Doc. And so I'm going to call you later on so we can debrief. Again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your energy. And I appreciate your work, Doc. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate that opportunity.
All right. Peace and love.
Peace.
All right, family. So you heard it. We just had on the great Dr. Naeem Akbar. Family, get his book. If you're not familiar with his work, grab his work. We have Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. If I open this book, you see all my marks. Like I study this book. All right. You see all my markings. So we have Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery, Know Thyself. And like I said, if I open up this book, you see all my little scribbles. So I study this stuff. Okay. Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery, Know Thyself. Also, New Visions for Black Men by Dr. Naeem Akbar. Family, and these are books that I actually give out to males and females. Okay. So I give it out to males and females. So New Visions for Black Men. And also, family, this is the book that he referenced earlier when he talked about anti-self disorder. Akbar, Papers in African Psychology. So, family, make sure, family, that you get on board, and get this work. Okay, I know a couple of people asked me to repeat the titles. And Dala, I see your comment in the chat. You say he is way too important to come on, with audio this distance and distance camera angle and an emoji, a close mic would have been better. Sir, just be grateful that he came on. Okay. So you coming on with criticism and all this other stuff. He's retired. Okay. So he didn't have to do anything. So that's what I mean by people being grateful. And I actually I had a presentation, a talk with you all about how people aren't grateful. So instead of just saying, hey, this was wonderful, I'm glad that we had an opportunity to be in a virtual space with him. Here you come with the criticism. Be grateful that he was here. Okay. And so he and I have been talking about him possibly coming back to do a full interview. This was just a chat. This was just a chat. And so I will be reaching out to him for a full interview. And so, family, make sure that you stay tuned for that. Also, family, I'm going to make some announcements. Be in the building tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, family. Be in the building at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have Dr. Tareen Wright. Dr. Tareen Wright will be coming on to talk about the measures to ensure a white majority tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember, we live in America, and it didn't happen by chance that white folks are 65% of the population. They passed a lot of laws and acts to ensure. First of all, they passed laws and acts to keep people of African descent locked out of this country, even after our people built the Panama Canal. Even after our people built the Panama Canal, what did they do? They tried to get people out. Family, they tried to make sure that we wouldn't, get citizenship, and they want to get people out of the U.S. All right, so she's going to be breaking this down at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. Okay, all of the measures that white people put in place to ensure a white majority here in the U.S. So, family, make sure that you're back here at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I already created the link. It's on YouTube. All you got to do is click there and hit notify me. All right. And so make sure that you're in the building to discuss this. Also, family, make sure that you're in the building for the ZIAC Science Fair this Saturday. All right. This Saturday on June the 10th at Restoration Plaza in Brooklyn, New York. If you're in the DMV area or you're in Philly or Delaware, make sure that you're in the building for this. And also, family, donate to it. If you can't make it, donate, right? Like if you can't make it to the event, donate. We're going to be exposing a lot of students, a lot of Black children to STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And there are a lot of children. Family, who have never seen, they've been taught math and science in the classroom, but they've never built anything, right, with it. Why? Because they're funded. And so they can't afford to teach STEM. And so a lot of these children are like experiencing STEM for the first time. So be a part of the movement, family. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Make sure that you donate. Here it is right here. Make sure that you donate. Here it is. Here's the link, family. Make sure that you donate to the GoFundMe. The goal is 5,000. We raised $3,762 so far. So make sure, family, that you donate. If you can't make it, or even if you do come, make sure that you donate. Donate $10, $20, just donate, okay? And then last but not least, family, we have changed the dates. Let me get this out of there. We've changed the dates for the STEM camp, the UACI Summer STEM Camp. It's going down now, family, July the 10th. July the 10th through July the 20th. So make sure, family, that you enroll your child in the UACI camp, STEM camp. Seats are very limited. We're going to do it in person and in virtual. And so it's 15 seats available in person, and 15 seats are available virtually. Okay. And so make sure that you enroll your children, your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, your cousin in this STEM camp. Your child will be exposed to coding, African history, okay, AI and cybersecurity. And so, matter of fact, today at 4 o'clock, I have a meeting with the curriculum developers. Okay, so we have some beautiful presentations, some beautiful lessons and hands-on activities for your child. And so make sure that you click the link and register as soon as possible. All right, family, I'm out of here. I'll see you at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure, family, that before you leave, you thumb up the video, thumb it up, thumb it up, thumb it up. Also share the video. We want to each one teach one. In an age of information, in the age of technology, all you got to do is just share, right? Like, just literally, if you want to each one teach one, just click the link, share the discussion, right? If you're on Facebook, post a link. If you're on Twitter, tweet the link. If you're on other social media platforms, just post the link. So share this discussion. And lastly, family, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that whenever I go live, you will be notified. Peace and Black Power.